I want to turn to a man who has sort of shaped modern Britain in many ways, albeit with all the elegance of a tax return written in crayon. Lord David Frost. Lord David Frost, once the Brexit negotiator. I very rarely got a good thing to say about Lord David Frost, and I'm not going to change the pattern of what I say today. Once a Brexiteer, once a Brexit negotiator, now a political drifter, he has once again suggested he might like to stand for election to the House of Commons. Not, mind you, for the Conservative Party, which he regards with all the loyalty of a substitute teacher on a Friday afternoon, but potentially for Reform UK. Let's have a look at him, because it's worth seeing what he looks like. The fact that he's floating the idea of standing again for the House of Commons tells me that Lord Frost is once again confused about the constitutional implications of the decisions that he makes. One might call it a pattern. And if he's so confused about this, it's not that surprising that he, when he was charged with overseeing the Brexit negotiations, he made such a balls up of that as well. Let's begin with a point of law. I think we've seen enough of David Frost. Let's begin with a point of... In fact, when I think of David Frost, I don't so much think of this man. I think of the wonderful David Frost, who who conducted those conversations with Nixon, who was the producer of the amazing film The Slipper and the Rose. But sadly, this is the man that we have to deal with, which is such a shame. Peer of the realm, he ought to know what, but he doesn't. He cannot stand for election in the House of Commons while he holds a life peerage. Not shouldn't, not mightn't, but cannot. Not under statute, not in spirit, and certainly not with any credibility. The rules are enshrined in the House of Commons Disqualification Act 1975, which bars peers, hereditary or life peers, from standing as members of Parliament, members of the House of Commons. But here's the twist. While hereditary lords can disclaim their titles thanks to the Peerage Act of 1963, passed following the campaign of Tony Benn, then Viscount Stansgate, to renounce his inherited title and remain in the House of Commons, there is no mechanism whatsoever for life peers to do the same. So while in principle peers can renounce their peerage and stand for the House of Commons, in practice only life peers can do it, and then only if they do so within a very short space of time upon inheriting their peerage. Life peerages are a legal dead end, a one-way ticket to the Lords with no off-ramp. Once you're in, you're in. Life means life, not as in a sentence, but not far off in procedural terms. Tony Benn's case is illuminating. He argued passionately that democracy meant the electorate could not be barred from choosing their own representatives simply because of an accident of birth, and his campaign led directly to the 1963 Act, allowing hereditary peers to renounce their titles. But crucially, life peerages are not inherited. They are not born but bestowed, and being a modern invention of the Life Peerages Act 1958, they come with no renunciation clause. This was intentional. Life peers are selected supposedly for their wisdom, judgment, and experience. They are meant to be permanent contributors to the legislative process, not politicians on sabbatical. So, Lord Frost, the only legal way out of his peerage would be disgrace, to be stripped of his peerage, and disgrace severe enough to trigger expulsion from the House of Lords under the House of Lords Reform Act 2014, permits the removal of non-attendance, criminal conviction, or formal expulsion. And even then it's ambiguous. It's ambiguous about whether the life peer then would cease to be a life peer or would simply cease to have the right to attend the House of Lords. I think there is an act going back to 1911 which allows for peers to be stripped of the peerage by the Crown, but again only for disgrace. So formal expulsion wouldn't necessarily mean a formal renunciation of the peerage. So not exactly the image one wants to project in a Reform UK campaign leaflet. Oh, I was disgraced so much I lost my peerage. Please vote for me. That brings me to the second problem. What sort of man accepts a life peerage unless it's a platform for repeated newspaper columns, television punditry, political mischief, and then treats it as though it were a slightly inconvenient gym membership? It tells us that Lord Frost, who negotiated the Brexit deal in such a way that he had to immediately disown it, has once again shown his extraordinary talent for not reading the contract. He's the only man I know who could sign up a deal with Brussels, claim victory, and then spend the next 2 years begging people to believe it was all someone else's fault. If you are so cavalier about constitutional status and party loyalty, if you accept a peerage and then agitate to jump ship to a populist party, what exactly do you believe in? And his remarks to I think it was the Normal Planet podcast, a name which might be considered oxymoronic in this context, included complaints that the Conservative Party no longer has a USP. I think it does, actually. It's called Cemre Badenoch. But I would suggest that any party that elevates a man who scorns both his own title and the agreement he was entrusted to negotiate has already lost its way. More broadly, Frost's manoeuvring reminds us of how thin the veneer of public services can be. A life peerage is meant to be an honour, a recognition that one has something of enduring value to contribute to national life, but here it's treated as a set of handcuffs, not a badge of honour. And we must resist the drift towards treating constitutional roles as interchangeable hats to be worn or discarded depending on polling trends. If Lord Frost wants to run for the Commons, he must first face the full consequences of abandoning his seat in the Lords, not in theory, but in disgrace. So here we are with a man who botched Brexit, misunderstood the binding nature of his peerage, and now flirts with a political outfit whose only consistent value is anti-establishment pique. If Lord Frost is the embodiment of elite disillusion, then he's also the embodiment of elite detachment. He cannot serve in the House of Commons unless he's removed from the House of Lords, and unless Reform UK intends to launch a manifesto commitment to abolish the very concept of peerages, or rather abolish the House of Lords. That may not necessarily abolish the concept of peerages, which, let's be honest, they might not have thought through. Then Lord Frost's musings remain constitutional fantasy and absurdity, as absurd, indeed, as his negotiation of Brexit. You can't have it both ways, David. I don't suppose I should refer to you as Lord David in this. I'm doing a little apostrophe here. You can't have it both ways, David. Titles come with obligations. And if you don't know that, well, it explains quite a lot about how you handled Brussels in the 2016 negotiation, or whenever it was, 2019, when you did such a clod-handed arrangement. This absurdity, this complete and utter absurdity. That is what we were left with because of Lord Frost's nonsense, and it reminds Lord Frost, the clod. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the man. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. We are all linked together. And what is so brilliant about Donne's poem is he makes it quite clear that he's also talking geographically. Britain is linked to Europe, as if a promontory were. We are part of Europe, but we're also clods, and Lord Frost is the greatest clod of all.